Who is Kazimierz Dąbrowski? Kazimierz Dąbrowski was born in 1902 in Klarów, Poland. He graduated in medicine, psychology, and pedagogy. He also trained in neurology, psychiatry, and psychoanalysis. He also studied philosophy, theology, developmental psychology, and child psychiatry. Even before finishing high school, he was already taking the first and second year university exams. He founded a clinic for women, children, and mentally handicapped. Today, the term is intellectual disability. He was a professor of child psychology and psychopathology, founded institutes, and participated in various scientific societies for mental health work. Dąbrowski's life was very difficult during the World War and the next years. Gestapo imprisoned him for months, but he was never sent to concentration camps. However, his two brothers were killed, one of them in a concentration camp. Dąbrowski was the second child of 4 children, and his youngest sister died of meningitis at the age of 3 years. His sister's death, while he was still a child, was one of the events that brought Dąbrowski into contact with existential questions that was present in his life and career. His experiences during the 2 world wars were the most significant for the development of his work and his life. In the First World War, he was 12 years old and witnessed battlefields full of dead soldiers near his home. During one of these experiences of walking through a field full of dead, Dąbrowski observed soldiers' faces, and he was intrigued by the fact that, while some of them had a transfigured expression of their face, others had an expression of tranquility and serenity. It was during the wars that he witnessed 2 opposing ways of being. There were people as inhuman as possible, capable of the most cruel atrocities, and people capable of acts of the highest character, such as risking their lives to save others, like, for example, people who hid Jews in their house to protect them from the Nazis. In 1949, during Cold War, the institute founded by Dąbrowski was closed down by order of Stalin. He was again imprisoned for a year and a half, and even after his release, he was closely monitored. Only in 1962 he was allowed to leave Poland. Throughout his life, he lived and worked in various countries. He held positions of great responsibility and leadership in health institutions. His work is immense, and most of it has not yet been translated from Polish. Some of it is available in English and French. For example, Personality Shaping Through Positive Disintegration in 1967, Mental Growth Through Positive Disintegration from 1970, Different Contemporary Conceptions of Mental Health from 1972, Psychoneurosis is Not an Illness from 1972, and his thesis was written in French, Les conditions psychologiques du suicide, from 1929.
Is knowledgeable of the theory, in the theory,
yes,
that's
yes.
He's halfway on the road to sorting himself out.
I think so. Yeah. And even as you know, I dislike the too often visits of my patient. No, this is 3, 4, 5. This is sufficient number, and after we transform psychotherapy to autopsychotherapy. And from this stage, it is not necessary to see very often psychologists or psychiatrists. Very clearly. This means such a people like to think about death, and even like to speak with somebody very clearly chosen about the death before their death. This means they feel something like necessity to be nearer and nearer, but with reflection toward problems of death. And if they have somebody with whom they could speak deeply, essentially about that, they will accept this with very deep joy and happiness. Well, the most of people dislike such a problems. The death is something like taboo. They do not want to think about the death, or they are thinking in verbalistic way. Even before that, they dislike to speak about. They are always almost sure that death will be difficult for them.
Well, okay. To a person who at a high level, is he thinking about transcendence of death? Is he thinking about life after death?
Very often, yes. But if they have not such a certitude, after all, to transcend, well, to see the necessity of spiritual transcendence of the death, they cannot accept something like, well, complete annihilation. Because the history of development, the history of suffering, the history of reaching higher level means for them something like kind of life.
So death is just another step, another
yes. Or they are very often not sure, but mostly of tendency are going toward this aim and this reality. And I can say that this is very clearly, well, harmonized with overexcitability and psychoneurosis, because in my opinion, overexcitability and psychoneurosis more possibility to reach higher original creative levels of reality. This means I am not against how I can say utilization of drugs.
Actually, sorry, I meant I didn't mean medical use.
Not medical. Well, I agree. I understand. Well, if this is linked with reflection, if this is not realized to very strong suggestibility of a low level, if this could introduce to some transcendental, so-called transcendentals, but if all this is in the reflective hands of individual, this is very good. Even something like such a kind of experience can build something like bridge toward another world, much more deeper.
Is this possible for people at, let's say, the lower levels, or is this only beneficial to people at a higher level?
No. If you will have fairly low level, they will be farther and farther toward unconscious utilization of drugs, and they will be going toward or even psychic dissolution, even psychosis, or from time to time something like borderline of psychopathic and nervous attitude. And this is almost never, this creates almost never developmental factor.
So it's
yes.
negative, would lead to negative disintegration.
Yes, negative, this is very clearly. This means, I repeat, I believe in positive action of some drugs if they are subordinated to the conscious, multi-level attitude of the individual. This I am optimistic and positive. Is that clear from my side? I think so. And well, such even religious attitude toward drugs, like Timothy Leary, this professor of psychology, Timothy Leary, yes, he told that this is drug utilization means something like new and much more higher sacrament for the life. He was intelligent, suggestive, and he have had very great influence in relation to youth. And I think this is terribly dangerous, because this take from our reflection, our independence, all possible factor for development. We are in such a condition, we are submitted towards something who is not clearly known and something who direct us. Yes, surely. And I am, I feel very badly about all this what I observe.
You don't like the Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi?
No. This is falsification. But many large group accept such a school. This means I am not against the Maharishi's method of meditation, because this is the same like in other systems. And meditation means something good, something to give relaxation and harmonization and so on. But if Mahesh Yogi told me in many journals that he will reject all suffering, and he will give possibility to see the world in the red colors, this means for me, how I can say this in English, charlatanery. Because this is anti-human. This is something, go away with suffering, go away with friendship, go away with stabilized love, go away from the possibility for development, go away from your human differentiation, only try to reach happiness or joyful experience, and so on. This is something completely anti-human.
Well, is this, you say his techniques would be not beneficial even to people, let's say at level 4, who feel very meditative?
No, people with level 4 will never accept such a method. This means they will utilize many methods of meditation, and I repeat, meditation is very good method, very good way. Only philosophy connected with such way, like in Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, is for me very dangerous and very anti-human.
Is that man himself not a very highly developed individual in your opinion?
No, well, this is very difficult to speak about this. I have some. No, I know his biography, but I have some inhibition. I wish to Maharishi Mahesh Yogi the best, only not to present such a philosophy. This is the factor of lowering of ourselves.
Lowering of ourselves.
Yes, sure. And not only Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, but mostly of such schools. You know that the basic factor in such schools means something like fantastic identity with moral principle, with God, with something like and this means that this is annihilation identity of your independence, of your individual personality. Because hot means complete identification. This means, like in Buddhist nirvana, this means annihilation of your individual personality.
In carrying on from there, could you explain how positive disintegration, how it differs from from the Eastern philosophies? Like, just talk about positive disintegration now to explain how it differs.
Terribly clearly, this means positive disintegration accept many positive aspects of the Eastern school of meditation. Only this theory do not accept and clearly reject the philosophy, the metaphysic of almost all Eastern philosophy, because they do not explain the sense of individual development and sense of individual life, to giving them at the end something like, I told you, identification. This means, in my opinion, annihilation of human individual personality. And well, Yogananda, who was a very great, I think, philosopher, and he, well, in his autobiography, somebody from his pupil asked him, Master, tell me, if I will meet my guru, whom I loved so terribly, in hereafter. And he told him, no, never, because you will be your guru, and your guru will be yourself. This means you will present something like unity, you will be completely identified, and you cannot meet something like guru as something like independent identity. Well, you know, in my opinion, the very strict and strong psychopaths have no possibility or small possibility, little possibility to move toward development. If they have something like some nuclei of nervousness, of psychoneurosis, well, such a nuclei help them to develop in the direction of uni-level disintegration. If they have in the same time something like deep, very difficult condition of life, and if they have some possibility, as I told you, for disruption, psychic disruption, disintegration by such a nuclei, they could go toward so-called uni-level disintegration. This means the lowest level of positive disintegration. Well, I will try to describe you only, you know, in your clinical practice, you see very rarely such a people. You can know them from some biographies, from history and so on, after even their life, but not in clinical practice. Because, well, they do not need any doctors, any psychologists, and they resolve their problem by themselves. Well, but after all, we can see clearly this. If somebody is on the called fourth level of development, this means multi-level, systematic, organized disintegration. You see that little by little, from symptoms of disintegration, you see in them something like first signs of secondary integration. They are much more organized, they are much more systematized, they are much more steady and stabilized on the highest level. They see clearly their concrete ideal, they dynamized this ideal, they differentiate very clearly between external and internal milieu, they differentiate their inner milieu very clearly, they know what means concrete ideal, social and individual, they know all this and they utilize in their development all such factors? Well, they have affective memory, and they know very well all stages of positive disintegration, but they present little by little more integrative forces than disintegrative.
It sounds like there are very few of these people around. Are they people that are rejected by society as well? Are they liked? Are they people who are liked, or are they people who are disliked?
You know, society in mostly of cases dislikes such a people. But, well, this is much more difficult to reject them because they are much more largely, deeply, on the basis of multi-levelness, organized. And they are much more reflective, they are much more harmonious. And for this reason they are rejected very often in the very terrible even form, like Socrates, like even Christ.
Like who else? Anybody else?
No, many people, like Pythagoras, for instance, like many saints. Partially not on the same level, but perhaps very near to this, like President Lincoln, who I do not know if you know that he had 2 times in mental hospital, and was the best president in the United States. And even in some extent we can say the same about first secretary of the United Nations, this means Dag Hammarskjöld. I am not sure about them because I do not know sufficiently his biography. But generally speaking, yes. How well? This is difficult to say. This was not my special thematic, but on the basis of my observation, I think that on the highest level, they are not very clear differences.
At the highest level?
At the highest level, in structure and functions of women and of men. Surely, perhaps the women are much more, how I can say, mild, much more, not much more, but after in some extent, perhaps more emotional in relation to high level of emotionality. But on the low level, on the mediocre level, they are very great differences.
Would you care to go into that, or?
Well, this means, well, you know, for instance, maternal instinct. This is very high in women, not in such a strong form as in relation to paternal instinct. Not. Next, I think that's at this stage, women present much more special kind of passivity and much more aesthetic attitude toward everyday life. Well, surely this is completely non-relativistic philosophy, and why? I cannot answer you why, but I see facts. This means all social or common group of characters are truly common, but all essential individual traits are different in each individual. You will have very different traits of Michelangelo or Lincoln or Socrates in relation to his individual traits. And what means individual traits? You know very well that this is a special interests, talents of individual, and such talents are always individual. Well, next, this is this unrepeatable, unique love and friendship relations, and the third is identification with oneself, with own history of development, and this projection of this identification toward future. This means this individual traits means something different in each individual on the highest level. here this is always mystery, and only through our own personal development we can perhaps reach the borderline between true empirical concrete transcendence and this life. But we see, for instance, in Christ, as you know very well, that this was a transformation of his personality. You know, this is described. And transformation in complete other form. Much more, how I can say, much more spiritual, much more influenceable, but much more subtle and so on. And I think that this is not very far from something like so-called in Eastern philosophy, astral body. This means perhaps this is hypothesis, perhaps after our death we can live in another form of the body, which will be something like spiritual body, but with all faculties. Well, I do not have personal experience, and even if I could have this will be very difficult to speak about this. But after all, I think that this tendency in many people to define his attitude toward immortality and to see prolongation of our personality on the highest level in hereafter, this means something very human and of very high level. And I think that this is way toward Christ experience. We are very sorry that Christ could not give us all explications, but he told us, well, that I have tendency to say you many more things, but in such a condition you could not support this. You cannot not understand, but you cannot accept this. Well, this is something for the future in Christ. Well,